coming. Quick introduction. So my name is Salvatore Ventura. I'm a commercial photographer here in Milpitas. So my services include commercial photography, so advertisement and marketing photography for businesses, so that they can basically use these for their advertisement and increase their business, increase their business in general. Obviously, I also do digital editing because as part of my services, I don't only take the pictures, but I do entertain the whole digital workflow, because obviously I have to go from capturing the images all the way to delivering them. And that's why we are here also taking this class today. All right. Two websites. The first website is the one where I have my main professional, so where you can find more about my services and portfolio and stuff. The second link is where I have my travel blog, which basically is almost 10 years now of worth of pictures and stories that I've been collecting through the time with my experience and interesting stories here and there. So just a way that I've been keeping myself accountable for the images I've been taking over the time. So it's been an interesting experience, and I keep doing that, not as much as I would like now, but it's been an interesting thing. Sorry if I go quick, but we'll have to go through a lot of stuff. So the class is theoretically in two 1-hour parts. The first part, we're going to do 30 minutes or so walk through the two main programs here that we're going to look today. So Lightroom and Photoshop. And when I say the walkthrough is basically, I'm going to try and show you how things work and highlight the features of both programs. So probably not going to be 30-30. I think I'm going to dedicate a little bit more to Lightroom, and I'm going to explain why, and a little bit less to Photoshop. But then we're going to have 1 hour of a hands-on project, or a little bit less depending on how we go. So that's going to be basically one project that we're going to go and work together so that we can actually apply some of the techniques that I'll be telling you about. And yeah, don't expect, I mean, the greatest result if this is your first time, but my point is here, at least you get an idea of how a digital workflow goes and what are the capabilities with Photoshop, and how actually, and it doesn't really matter if it's Photoshop or not, what is that you expect when you want to work with digital files into digital editing software. So we're going to talk about layers, masking, and things like that. Q&As will be spread across around the session, so I'll try to answer questions as far as I can, but I'll have to really go fast, so I'm sorry. But on the other hand, there's going to be an email address that you can send me inquiries after. So there is also a business card on the sign-up sheet, so it's good that if you leave your email there, that's fine, that's great. And sometimes you can also take a copy of the card, or you can have a card from here, just in case I cannot read your email. So if you don't see an email from me, because I'm going to send the slides at the end of the day or tomorrow, then inquiry. So maybe I couldn't read your email, or I typed it wrong and I sent it to something else. And so just a good idea to also have my email available, and also for questions. At the very end, there will be a questionnaire, and if we don't get to that point, I'm going to send an email out so that you can actually go and provide feedback about this. So images for the lab, so everybody is clear on their conscience. There are going to be a couple of images that I already uploaded on your computer stations. There is a folder called raw files, R-A-W files, and in that folder there are probably 6 images. So 3 of them are mine, and there's basically raw images taken from my camera that I'm going to basically use for, hopefully we're going to be able to try and experiment on some of these just to see what it means to use Lightroom for those. And then there are going to be other 3 images, which are actually downloaded from pexels.com, which is a CC0 website. So basically these are copyright free, and so we'll be able to use them as we wish. Even though this is anyway a learning experience, it's fine. So at least we know we're not infringing anybody's copyright when we do that. Agenda. So we're going to talk about digital workflow, what a digital workflow is. We're going to talk then about Lightroom, what it is, and give you an overview of the software. And they're going to look through the screen on the application. And they're going to talk about Photoshop and what it is, and what's the overview, and an overview of the main functionalities in it. I understand that Photoshop is a huge program. So Photoshop does everything from, you're going to see in one of the screens, it does 3D modeling all the way to videos. And in between there is drawing and Photoshop, photo editing and other stuff. So I don't know, obviously, all of that, because many professionals don't even know all the functionalities. Everyone just uses the tool where they find fit. So we're going to take just a quick look at the main functionalities here, and then when we do the practice, I'm going to see a little bit more. To learn more, there is a lot of resources out there, and then you probably want to get to where you want to specialize, of course. And anyway, then in the future, I'm going to probably try also to get another class up with a little bit more focus on one or more topics. That's a lab project right there. Okay, so digital photography workflow. So when we talk about the digital, hello, there is a sign-up sheet, please, thank you. So a digital workflow, digital photography workflow is the flow that goes from, actually there are several steps. So that goes from when you take the image all the way to when you actually deliver the image to your client, to your blog, to your website, it doesn't matter. So when you start from start to end, what it means and what are the steps that are involved. So the first step is obviously the capture of a digital image, because if you don't have digital image, you cannot do digital processing on it, right? So the capture of the digital image is the very first step. And usually we do it today with digital cameras, we could do it with scanners, but that's the very first step. The second that is in a proper photography workflow is, the second step is the asset management, the digital asset management. Now, digital asset management is a broad category of stuff. It just means that you are able to basically tag the images or the asset. You are able to actually follow through the process of who updates the file, who does things, who exchanges it, who deletes it, and things like that. So in photography, with the tools that I have, I'm going to show, we're only going to be able to do some other stuff, like tagging, flagging, setting colors, starring them, and things like that. But the important part of the asset management is the ability then to perform searches. Now, I don't know, you already probably have millions of pictures already, so when you have a lot of pictures and you're going to try to sort them out, now that's when a digital asset management is really something like that you can't live without after you start using it. So, so that is one of the big important pieces in a photography work, in a digital photography work. The third step is obviously the editing, because images come out right, that's fine, but most of the times you need some editing on top of that. And it can mean enhancement of the picture, it can mean cropping, it can mean anything. Anything that you do to an image, even just putting it together into a brochure, that means editing. So those are the steps that we want. And generally for a proper workflow, we want it to be non-destructive. So we want to be able to always go back to the original image, even though we edit on top of it, so that we don't lose the source of the whole process. The last piece, and it's not the least important, is the export of the file. Because raw images or all images that are processed through Photoshop and things like that are not usable as they are, as much as we may think so. But you cannot bring a Photoshop file and send it to a printer. You cannot send a Photoshop file and send it to somebody. There's always a step where you're going to actually export this file, optimize for the media that you're going to use it for. For example, if it's a website, you're going to be shrinking it or things like resize it. So that process there is also, that step there is also part of the whole process. So these are the components that are part of a digital photography workflow, from capture all the way to delivery. Now, there are several tools that we can use for that. Oh, backup is one more. Now, for backup you have to do backup. That's the proper way. There is the 3 strategies, the 2-way strategies, the 5-way strategies, whichever strategy you use, just make sure you have a proper backup of the files. So that is an extremely important step. And we're going to also talk about that because there is not only of the asset itself, not only of the picture itself, but also of the catalogs. And catalogs are part of those digital asset management tools, where all the data is actually, and all the steps and information is recorded actually. So the tools that we have available for that, so for digital image capture, well, the most common one is going to be a camera, in whichever form it is, camera, cell phone, whatever. The second is going to be for asset management. I'm going to talk about Lightroom, because Lightroom is not just a digital editor, it's actually an asset management tool for photography. And so that's probably the most important component of Lightroom. So why would you use that? Because you really want to start being able to track all your assets in a certain way. For editing and export, you can use either Lightroom or Photoshop. So now Photoshop is obviously much more powerful from an editing point of view, but it does not do any asset management. So you edit the file is there, and then you have to figure a way to tag it or remember what it does, remember what you did. So that is a different type of functionality that Photoshop obviously does not have. And for backup, you use the tools that you have available. So again, that is not what we're going to be talking about here. So let's talk a little bit about Adobe Lightroom, and there's going to be 2 parts, I think, a few slides, and then we're going to go through the lab. Actually, yeah, I had imagined this a little bit different depending on availability of stuff, but we're going to do and look at a couple of things. Actually, so you have Adobe Lightroom on your station. So if you can find it and start it up, you probably have to go a little bit back and forth. Let me see. So when you start Lightroom, it seems like a huge screen with a lot of stuff in there. If you don't find it, search it into the menu, but you should be able to see because I think I checked earlier. But if you don't have it, well, let me know. Okay, generally speaking, if you could follow me, you can probably try and do something like import photos and videos. And then I think it is on your desktop, which is going to be on users. It's going to be the lab, I think. And then desktop. And then you should see your profiles. Okay. So it's users, lab user, desktop, profiles. Then you can just select them all. So during the first step, this is when you start importing your files into Lightroom. And it's not just you're importing them to Lightroom as, there is more to it. So it's basically, it's going to start tracking out these assets where they are. And it's going to start allowing you to perform tagging and things like that. So
after desktop, what is that? Raw files. Raw files. Select all?
Yeah, select all. Now on your right hand side there is a file handling and apply during import. So here to the right. Now when you open these is when you can start seeing the beginning of the functionality for asset management. Because now you can take these images and you can start, for example, putting keywords in there. For example, I don't know, this is Milpitas, this is the city, this is the state. So you can basically put whatever makes sense to you as a keyword so that you later will be able to basically track these assets as they are. And the keyword now, these keywords are going to be applied to all of these images. So I'm going to make probably class and then a library. But you can then actually tag each photo individually once they are already in the catalog so that you can have more specific tags for that. So let's assume that we do that, and then let's do import.
Import?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, one more time. Files from what we do?
So the files were from, let me see.
Open, right? Open catalog, right?
Not open catalog. File, import photos and videos.
Oh yeah, import, sorry.
Yeah.
Import photos and videos, the very first command here.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm. Okay, as you can see, and it's probably not visible here, so this is tracking now the files in the folder where they actually are. So if you want to organize in separate folders, you can organize your images however you like. Adobe Lightroom is going to track them wherever the files are if you want it that way. So it's going to basically here tell you that this is the folder where they are, and it gives you the full path, of course, and how many images are in this folder. Now, from this moment on, you have a fully managed set of images in here. So you can select each one individually, for example, and then you can change the keyword. For example, this one is going to be probably, I don't know, a scene for a lake. And then you can go to another image, and you see that there is a different set, I mean, the original set of keywords, but you're going to add here, for example, seaside, I don't know, beach, and then things like that. Now, functionality like this here, you can put moon. And then here I put castle.
Yes.
And here we're going to put,
And you will find
when you select one image or multiple images, you can always go here, and then basically there is a, if this tab is closed, you can open it up. There's keywording, you can add keywords or remove keywords for that particular image. Now, don't be stingy with keywords. Avoid the duplicates. I mean, if it doesn't make sense for a particular image, if there is not a dog and you put dog, then it's not going to help you later on. It's fine, but I mean, nothing happens, right? But the better you do this exercise as you import images, the better it's going to be in the long term. So you're basically going to thank yourself in a couple of years from now. So I do this, for example, every time I finish, I import pictures from my camera. So whenever I'm done and I've done a walk, a hike or something, and I come back and I like to take I like to see the pictures, I'm going to import them into the catalog, and from that moment on, I'll be able to actually work with these images in a little bit more efficient way. So the first thing I usually do, obviously, is I start putting keywords on these images, because that way it's just a habit. So every time you do it, you probably have like very few images you tag at the beginning, and then you just reap the benefits later on. Now, before we move on, I think, are we all here? Is there anyone behind? No, I think we should probably, you behind? Where are you?
I inputted all the files, but I don't see anything like what others are seeing on the right-hand side and left-hand side.
Did you click on the import button?
Yeah.
Okay, let me just quickly come over. And I will just...
I input all the files and
Oh, yeah, no, you're good. So here is your keywords.
yeah.
So, and then you basically just every time you can now you can, yeah,
For some reason, it wouldn't pull up the one I was looking at.
These are also like the
So, but what you see here, I don't see.
oh, you can
So
probably,
I was doing.
some of these are going to be slightly different just because of the,
I
So, if I castle.
no, you're still on the import button here.
No, because I put Milpitas library in the big one.
So I
Then one more imported the power.
Yeah, you import the files as well.
Yeah, I used comma.
the programmer.
These ones. So here you can do the apply to file, here just for keywords, and then press these. Okay.
We are not good.
All right. So, now let's go back to a few slides. So that is the very first step. Now let's go back to a few points in the slide that I have here. Now, if you look on the top of the software, there are, on the top right, there is a kind of a menu that says library, develop, slideshow, print. There's probably another few words there, maps and stuff. So those are I consider these, the four that I'm listing here, the main modules for the software. So in these modules, what it basically does, it has slightly different functionalities for what you need to do during the workflow. So the library is the digital asset management piece. So where you're actually going to do mainly the tagging, the flagging. So there are ways to select these images and to categorize them for your own reference. And one is obviously the tags that we've done. Other ways are that you can flag images. There is a little flag on some of those, and I'm going to walk you through some of those steps. You can color code them, you can rate them, so that basically later on you can filter the whole thing, and then, for example, preserve only the images that are the top, 5-star images that you like very much, and other images can be sorted in other ways. And I'll tell you how I do that. And then the library is also where you can do collections, smart collections, and collection sets. So a collection is basically a way to put folders as reference into a particular folder. It's an artificial folder, it's not a real folder, and that's the beauty of it, so you don't have to repeat storage, so you can save on that. And I don't know, for example, you can say all my pictures from, 2018, and then you just put basically pointers to that, to those collections. Collection sets are collections of collections. And the smart collections are actually the cool ones, because with smart collections you can say, it's a collection that is based on properties. For example, I can say in a smart collection, I want, in this collection, all the pictures that I have tagged with the word bird. So then it goes through all your images, the whole catalog, doesn't matter, and then it's basically going to put references to to images that you tagged as bird. So basically you gain an overview of all the bird pictures that you have. across all your catalog. Or the same way you can do even more sophisticated way. You can say, all the pictures are tagged with the dog, but that have been starred 3 times and that have been a flag of, or have been colored with a red banner on it. So you can basically be very, very selective with that, and that helps you basically create things like best pictures of 2018 or best pictures of 2017. So it's according to your own criteria. So we're going to look about that. The library module is also where you do the export. So this is where you start creating your JPEG files. Basically, it's the last step. You still do it from the library module. So let's quickly.
Is that based on the keyword I was putting?
So again.
The collection, the smart collection, is that based on the keyword I was just putting?
Yes. Yeah. So that's why, I mean, it's very useful for you to put the keywords as you go, as you import images, so that later on you can use, for example, the smart collections. That is one of the best features that you have when you have the digital asset management. Okay, yeah, sorry. Okay, so let's look at some of these features. So if you're not in the library, you should be in the library, but these are the buttons that I was referring before. So if you go in development, it has a slide, very different view actually, not slide. But we're going to really go in. Oh, this is still thinking to give me tips. We're really going to focus on the library itself for that. So in the library, you have the main screen here that you can adjust with a different type of view. Like you can see one picture at a time, see there is a button down there, or you can see the whole screen. There is also a list of images down at the very bottom, which is basically the same, but it allows you to go through the images. If we, for example, press the button enter, then you can just go left and right with your cursor, and you can move back and forth. Okay, now what's the important thing here? The important thing is that, for example, you can flag images. And flagging basically means there are these controls down here that allow you, for example, to say flag as pick or flag as reject. So imagine you come back from a walk and you have like 100 pictures. Now, are they all going to be good? No. Some are going to be good, some are not going to be that good, some are going to be workable. So the first step that you do in this process is to actually go through your images and decide which ones are going to be picked and which ones are going to be rejected. The point is that when you mark it as, let's say we mark these 2 images as picked for whatever reason, and we go back here, then you have the ability to actually enable filters, which are down here. And then you can basically enable or disable the filter here. So let me only see the pictures that are flagged. Let me see everything. Or let me see, there's another one we can see where the default constructs show. And you have also the ability to actually do much more refined sorting of this. I think this is more like the iTunes in old days. Now I don't know if it's still there. You can do flags. You can do rates, you can do camera info, things like that. I don't remember that. There was a color, to see colors. I don't see colors. Okay, let's leave it as this for now. So there is also a way to actually put here the colors flat. So, nothing matches the filter for stars. So let's close this one here. And when you do the reject instead, which you can basically say in either by picture here, when you reject the picture, then it's going to be an easy way for you to delete all the images that you flagged, because you can do a control backspace, and it's going to remove all the pictures that have been basically rejected. So again, this is an easy way for you to go through a catalog of your 100 images you just imported. You just go through them, you flag the ones that you want to pick, you flag the ones you don't want to reject. At the end of the cycle, you can just press delete all the pictures that have been flagged as a reject, and then they're gone. And that is a good practice to do. Now, I'm not going to reject this one. Don't delete those pictures because we're going to need them for this time, but that's one of the facilities. Other things you can do in here is also color code them. So if you right click on the image, there is also a color label. So there are like 5 colors that you can use. And for example, I use them as, I mean, the red are the best of the session, the yellow are okay, but not the great. Then you can say, for example, green, I'm going to keep it because it's unique for whatever reason, but I'm not going to use it for publishing or things like that. So you can basically have a bunch of colors here that you can use for increase, I mean, a meaning to the image for your own records. So now, you can use the system however you want, right? I mean, there is no rule, but these are the facilities that you have. So you have a way to tag the images with keywords. You have a way to say pick and reject. Pick and rejects are probably the most hard-coded ones. I mean, if you pick an image, it's fine, but if you reject, that there is an automated function to delete those images. And then after that, there is the color coding, which you actually find your own way to color code images. And then the rating is also something that you can decide how you want to rate an image on your own. Okay? Now, the next step. So any questions on the management part? I know it's a lot to take in one shot, but at least get the idea. You import the images, and then the first step is find a way to actually sort through all the images that you imported, and then at the end, destroy the images that you don't need because it's completely blurry. You're not going to recover the image, so just delete it and you're fine, and you're done with that step.
So as far as the keywords, I know the ratings and the flags are probably just on Lightroom, but as far as the keywords, will that follow, is that embedded in the image so that if you upload it to the internet, it'll have those keywords you chose embedded in it?
Yes, it does actually.
Okay.
Yes, so the keywords are going to be embedded in there. Even the rating is in there. I think the color not, but the rating is also in there.
Oh, it's also, okay.
Is also in there. How useful is this? I don't know. The keywords most likely yes. Although there is a way when you export the image to say don't put the keywords in there, so just shrink the file a bit better.
Okay.
But yes, otherwise they follow.
Put metadata in the photo, and then when it goes to the
follows the
internet,
photos,
Google
yeah.
can use that metadata.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome.
Actually, matter of fact, when you import them, you can also put your copyrights.
Oh, nice.
So there is a function to, upon import, there is a way, I'm not going to go to that, but there's a way to just say, by default, always put these keywords, or by default, always put my copyrights with whatever file, name and website and information you have. So that's another powerful thing of the tool. Now, functions that I'm showing here.
So now we have imported from one particular folder. So I have photos in different folders, lot of folders. Do I need to do everything import and then everything will come into one particular place? Like if I have 10 folders with different pictures, I want to load only 5 folders or something like
Yes, so, yes, exactly. So the photos remain where they are, so in whatever folder you have. Now when you import, you get the discovery dialog will see all the images in that folder. Now we selected them all, but you can only say, I want to only manage 3 of these. So you just select those ones, and those are the only ones that are going to go into the catalog. When they go into the catalog, they're not going to be copied as a file. So the file remains there. If you delete it from there, there is no other place where these images are. But the only managed files are the ones that you selected to be imported into the catalog. So when you delete an image, there are two places where the image will be deleted. One is remove the record from the catalog, and the other one is physically remove the image. So the two steps are not linked together necessarily. So you could delete an image from the catalog and the image still resides on the disk, and the Lightroom does not know about it, but it can rediscover it if you ask him to. The other is you just deleted the file, you lost the file. Lightroom still has a record of it, but it will say, it will probably have just an icon of it, and it will or a thumbnail, and it will tell you, I don't know where this file is. Maybe you moved it.
Yeah.
If you move it, it's able to actually re-find it, or it tells you, try and find it again. Let's say you move it to folder or rename the folder. But yeah, otherwise, you have to do it in 2 steps. Or when you delete the file, it will actually ask you, do you want to only remove it from the catalog, or do you want to remove it from the disk as well? So two components to it. Okay. And so you basically can have here a full tree of folders and disks and things that you can find in here. No particular suggestion. That's up to how you want to manage your files on your drives. Okay. Let's look quickly at the develop module, which is where you do the digital editing of these files. So all the, and we have a few tools. I mean, Lightroom is not as powerful as Photoshop, but they can do quite a lot. So I think for general photography, you really can do most of what you need with the Lightroom, and basically never go into Photoshop unless you need extremely advanced functionalities and control. And we're going to talk about virtual copies, which is a beautiful thing that that the Lightroom enables you to do. So when you want to edit an image, you basically select the image that you want to edit. Let's assume we want to edit this one. And then you basically move into the develop tool. So you just have the image and then you move to the develop tool. Now, as you can notice at the bottom, we still have the ability to basically see the images that we're working on, that we have in our folder. We still have filters and things, so you can still work in that way. But now the right-hand panel has changed quite a bit. Now, there are several sections here with several things that can be done. And then we can basically look at some of those. And up here we have the famous histogram of the image. So basically you see here how your image is doing. We also have a couple of tools here, like with brushes and for some of the operations. Spot removal, red eye correction. This one is for graduated filters. This is radial filters. And then we have an adjustment brush, which is probably the closest, the most controllable tool that you have in there. Again, I think most of the stuff you can do in Lightroom is enough for most of our photography jobs. So let's look into a couple of these. Okay, first of all, if you look into the basic, you can do some of the first adjustments. The first thing you can do if you really are lazy or you really have no idea, because there are two things. So once you want to see what the camera, what Lightroom thinks is the best settings, or and I do that sometimes. Or sometimes it's just you have no idea how to make it better, and you can just click on the auto button, and it will basically do something. Now this is very similar to your camera auto system, so you may not necessarily agree with it. So if you don't like what you see, you can always say reset, and it just goes back. Now the beauty of this, again, is that whatever you do here is non-destructive, so the tool will not destroy your image. So you can do any type of modifications here. Your original image remains there as it is. In fact, there is no save button. So when you do these changes here, you don't have to save. The information gets saved on the catalog. So as steps to reproduce the images we have. So you can control the exposure. So again, these are stop numbers in fractions. So you can go 1 stop, 2 stop, 3 stop upward. And then obviously the result is what it is. And then here you have contrast control. You can change that. You can control the level of the highlights. And then you can basically, for example, in this case, I would like to pull down the highlights so that I can regain a little bit of the sky in here. I can push up a little bit the shadow. So going to the right increases the value, going to the left decreases the value of something. And again, these are things that you basically have to experiment based on how you like the image and things. So that there is really nothing there I can teach you at this point. So this is really an overview of the tool itself. The first thing obviously you notice on this particular image is that it's crooked. And so one way to actually adjust it is to use the crop tool. If you click on the crop tool, one of the interesting things, for example, you can use this angle tool here. And the angle tool works like this. You basically draw a line following something that you think should be the horizontal. And so I think that this more or less should be the horizontal, and then the Lightroom will automatically adjust it and crop it for us. So now it's a little bit more straight. It works also vertically. So if you have vertical lines, then you basically draw on something that you think should be vertical, and then Lightroom will detect that and decide that, and do basically perform the same kind of function. So that is with this crop tool. Now, if you want to instead, for example, remove blemishes on skin, or also here, for example, I don't know if you noticed there is this big spot up here. So there is this tool here, which is the spot removal, which you can make bigger with your turning the mouse wheel up and down. And you can basically click on the spot that you want to be corrected, and Lightroom will automatically pick a place where to basically spot correct that, and that goes away. I don't know if it's visible very well from here, but on the image, if you see where the mouse is, you're probably going to be able to see that big white spot. That works for removing, that has some intelligence to it. So if you're careful in how you select the place, it has excellent results. It has excellent results on skin. You're obviously going to be using a bigger image and make it smaller and make fine, a fine circle in there. And you have control on how opaque this tool will be and how you feather the tool from in and out.
So I selected this spot, now it's giving me an arrow and a circle around it. So what I need to do?
Like, is it like what I have on screen?
Yeah.
Okay, you basically click on the spot that you want to remove.
Yeah, I clicked on it, so that's why it gave me another circle.
Ah, okay, the other
and an
thing,
arrow.
oh yeah, because what happens is, let me show you. What happens is, it's using this area here to fill in this one here. So you don't have to do anything. And basically now you can just go back to the tool outside and then remove that, and that's done. So
So
go
I-
back to the tool up here.
So after, it says that from here it will copy the colors to here.
Yes.
And then I need to click it again, or
No,
it
no,
will-
no, you can just get out, you're done. The reason why it does that is because sometimes it doesn't pick a good area, or you don't like the result. So I don't know. Here now this is a bad example, okay? But let's say you tell them to fix that. Now it's using the data from here, and this probably is not exact. But now look what I can do. I can just lift it a little bit and move it around, or say no, I don't want that. I want to pick the image from here. This is a bad example. I don't have a good example here. But in some cases, especially on skin, sometimes it picks an area that is not ideally, and then you can just notice that you don't want that area to be the one where it picks the data from. So you can just adjust where the data is being picked, and so you get a better result.
But it's not getting removed. I mean, this arrow is still there. How to?
Now that you have that, go out of the tool. So basically click on the spot removal tool again. So just
Okay.
now basically this is removed. If you want to go back and find it where you have it, you can just basically select the spot removal tool and then hover where it is, and you can find your original spot. And if that doesn't work for you, you can just basically delete that. So I delete that thing, now it's back. So again, I go in, click, it will fix it. Sometimes it picks a different area. Done. Oh, I didn't like it. Go back, delete it. Leave it as original.
So how do we select it again?
You just select the tool
Uh-huh.
and then hover. I mean, now it's gone. Okay, hold on.
Same place.
Select the tool
Different.
and just hover on the image. You have to more or less remember where it was.
And what about if I've done it at two places? Then how to delete the?
Two places. There are going to be two places. See, like there is one here and there's one here.
Okay, so it will automatically mark those when I click that.
Yeah. When you go in with the tool, you can just basically see where the others are, and then as you go there, you can just select it and delete it, just with the delete key.
Okay.
So, and things like that. So more or less, also these other tools work the same way. You can do some adjustments, and then you get out, the tool goes away. You want to see where that was, you just select it, you go back in, and you will find that button. So unfortunately, I don't have time to go through all of them. So we looked at the crop for make the image straight, this one for spot removal, so you can actually fix things there like specks of dust or, again, skin imperfections, things like that. The red eye correction I never really use, but it works for obviously red eye. The graduated filter is interesting because when you use it, you can basically make an image gradually darker or gradually lighter. I don't know if you notice here, see? It just basically splits and then gradually makes it either lighter or darker. And it has basically a weight, so meaning you can, if you draw it like this, it's going to be diagonal. If you draw it from the bottom, it's going to be reversed. And then you can adjust it in several ways. And again, same thing. If the thing is there, if you have applied that effect, you will find it if you use the tool. If you want to remove it, you just go back in, select it, and delete. And you can have multiple of these and combinations thereof, so it doesn't really matter. The radial filter is similar to the graduated, but it's radial, so it basically works on an ellipse. And you can adjust this, so you can make it, I don't know, let me just exaggerate so you have an idea. So it darkens outside of the circle and it leaves it as it is inside. Dark is because I'm just changing the exposure here, but you have a set of things that you can change. So you could increase the contrast or just one or a lot of these, and that is what this effect is going to be applied. Okay. So these are basically the editing tools that you have available in the bar. These adjustments instead are global. So when you adjust as lighter, it's actually going to be applied to the whole image. There is a tone curve here that you can do as well, so you can fix highlights. Again, this gets applied to the whole image. And then here you can change just colors individually, so you can change the saturation luminance of individual color channels. For example, if we were to pick this image, we can basically lighten up or darken only the blues. As usual, I mean, if you go too much, then it doesn't look good. Saturation, again, you can pick a particular color and you can see the results. And this is also what you use sometimes in those images that are completely black and white, but you have like that red umbrella which just remains there. So this is one of the ways you can do it. You basically desaturate everything and just leave that color on. Can I do this somewhere here? No, I don't really have something to do it here. But basically, if you were to keep the green, you can just desaturate everything, and you will only see the green. Actually, the green is this one. And sometimes the grass is actually a little bit more yellow than just green, but you basically keep just that color in the image, and you remove everything else. So, anyway, these are really, this is where you spend then most of the time to try to figure out what is the best way to do these things.
Excuse me, how do you get those, that menu function?
I don't know if, depending on how your screen is, if you see just this, you have basic, is what we looked at before. Then we have tone curves. And sometimes if they stay open, you just scroll down, and then you're going to find one of these triangles here, and then you can scroll down, and there's another one. Split toning is also another functionality which is very interesting. So details are where you do the sharpening. So if you really want to sharpen an image, when you want to just reset your values, because for example I don't want it now to be with those colors on it, you can just double click on an individual slider and we'll go back to the default, which is not always 0, but.
So one question. I mean, getting the right exposure and everything, is it an art which actually comes in within you, or is it something like you teach yourself?
A little bit of both. A little bit of both, because you remember the histogram from last week, right? So that at least gives you room to work. Now you may want an image which actually looks darker, because the moment you start editing the image, then it's all on you. It's your decision. Now that it doesn't matter anymore how you capture it's important how you capture the image, but the result that you want to convey now is your vision. So you can make it dark, you can make it, I don't think there's a rule that says it has to look in a certain way. Now it's really your artistic vision on the image.
So how people, when the experts evaluate an image, then it is more of an experience, right?
Yes.
But for me, what I think is but they would have some standards on which they would.
Yes. Again, it's who's the recipient of the image, who's going to like the image, right? Last week we were talking about how a good image is evaluated as good. It depends. It has to be executed in a certain way. It has to follow your vision. The vision has to be executed, and then the viewer, the receiver of the image, has to agree with your vision. Because otherwise, there is no point. If I present you a picture which is just like that, you may say, yeah, it's a nice image. But for example, if you saw, for example, a little bit more of the a little bit more of the blue sky, it may give you a little bit, well, not like that, but a little bit more blue sky, it might give you a little bit more of a happy feeling, because, oh, it's a blue sky, it's not like washed out. So you can have all these kind of reactions to it. So if the picture, once you adjust the things, you think that this is a good image, like a good painting, then you should be good to go. And the taste changes with time. So as you take more pictures and as you edit them as you go, your taste changes and evolves. And so you study others' pictures. You're going to be exposed to other images. You're going to see, I like them or not, and why. Is it because I have more colors or less colors? And you develop also your own taste to what you want to convey. So not everybody has the same taste, of course. Because otherwise it's the 18% gray. So you just come here, you press the auto button, and then whatever the camera says it's good, and that's good, but it's, again, it may not be as good as we would really like. It doesn't give us any motion. Now I obviously messed up the horizon there. Other things in this panel, details where you do the sharpening. When you increase the sharpening, you can get an image which is a little bit more crisp. Obviously, if you exaggerate on anything, it becomes bad, but you can see that there is a bit more crispness in there. So just exaggerate at the beginning just to have an idea. Noise reduction, if you want to remove noise, for example, your ISO was too high and you want to remove that noise, also you have that kind of control in here. And then you have the lens correction, which actually allows you to fix, you see that? That's a correction upon the lens. So every lens introduces a certain amount of distortion. So that can be corrected in software, and the Lightroom has a catalog of lenses. So usually the data is picked up from the image itself, so you don't need to input anything. As long as you enable the profile correction, Lightroom will be able to actually fix the distortion for you automatically. Now, is it always worth it? Depends. Once again, this is aesthetic. So depending on the situation, you may want to do that. Otherwise, it's fine if you don't. Transform allows you to basically straighten up images, especially when you have like, what's that called? Architectural. Like you picture of a room, usually have those weird bold lines, depending on the camera. So with this one, you'll be able to actually tell the tool to automatically straighten the whole lines. So it makes it very, very easy to do that. And now we don't have here an example where we could apply it.
So what is that? I mean,
it will be here basically in auto. If the software detects straight lines like a building or windows, you could click on auto and do it. Now in this case it doesn't work, so you can't use it here. Oops.
so one more question for this photo.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look in at the behind, then the chain of mountains is not visible.
Mm-hmm.
But if I make it darker,
Mm-hmm.
if I decrease the exposure, then they start appearing.
Mm-hmm.
So would you call that the right exposure when everything starts appearing, or this is the right exposure? How do we, I mean, which would be?
Who's your, no, which one is your subject? Is it the whole image? Is it like a landscape you want to see? You want everybody to be able to see everything from here to there? Or you just care about, for example, the front here?
Okay.
So again, you make an image and you want to make sure that what you want the person to see is correctly illuminated and correctly in the right spot. Now this is a very generic image, so this is not a good image, right? But so if your goal is to show this area here in front, then the background may, if for you the background is not important, then you don't care. If the background is an important piece that you actually say, it has to just give me an idea of that, then you basically can leave it however you want. I mean, you can make it more or less prominent, and that's really vision. So if it were like this, where is it? If it were like this, then probably is not very useful as an image, because there is nothing really here that actually pops, except the whole image pops. It's a white thing. But if you start deciding that something is more important, see, when you for example make it darker, then the background starts
what I
becoming,
did, then it's actually started appearing.
right, and the background is starts becoming more prominent because it's more lighter. So now your eyes are not even looking down here; they're looking more down towards the end of the picture, towards the end of the scene. So you can control what you want to see by lots of different ways. Well, effects are additional things. So you basically can perform these kind of vignetting, you can control the vignetting and things like that. So camera calibration, it's not going to go there. This is really color management and other stuff. So you can leave defaults on those ones, you should be okay. But at least this gives you an idea of the capability. So as you can see, already from this develop panel, you can really do a whole lot of things on an image. If you can explore the tools a little bit more, you can have a better, I mean, with some experience, you can see, or also other tutorials are more specialized for that, you can really see a lot of things that you can do with just Lightroom. So you don't necessarily need to use Photoshop for that. Now, if you were to use Photoshop, you can integrate the two together. You can always do a right click and edit in Photoshop. which is going to basically tie the two things together. So when you edit an image from Lightroom into Photoshop, Lightroom will create an additional copy of the image, a physical copy of the image, will open it into Photoshop, and at the same time it will add that one to its own catalog. So now you're really tied into it. Otherwise, you can just work with Lightroom. So we're not going to do that one from here. Actually, we might later do that. Now, okay, this is for the develop panel. Again, this is really exploring, trying to understand, and never be worried, because if something goes wrong, if you mess up the image, you can always reset and start from scratch. Anything you do, there is the undo button, of course. Anything you do does never affect the file on the disk. So this is all metadata information that is in the catalog. So if you lose the catalog, you lose this, but otherwise, yeah, the image stays as it is.
So when we reset, it is actually the original picture which comes in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are there any checkpoints also in this where?
No, if you reset, you go blank. Now you can, I think, undo the reset and you'll be fine. You can go back, but yeah.
There are no checkpoints like after 5 changes, I think
No, there is no save, no. There is, though, to that point, there is the functionality that is called the virtual copy. The virtual copy, let me just go back to the library, just because in the library it's easier to see. I can right-click on an image and say create a virtual copy. So let's assume that this is one of the edits that I like, but I want to do something else with the same image. Now I can create these virtual copies. And the beauty of the virtual copy is that I can edit a copy of the image, I can start from scratch, and then do a complete different type of edit. And now I have, for example, let me make this square for whatever reason, and let me do split toning. And yeah, I'm picking things randomly right now, but let's assume that this is my second edit. Now the beauty of this is that now I have, go back to the library, I have 2 images. Actually, I don't have 2 images. I have one physical file and 2 different edits of the same image. So which one is better? That doesn't matter. I mean, you wanted to try different things. This would be probably the best way to make a checkpoint.
So the changes only live in Lightroom?
The change only lives in Lightroom. Yes.
So if you like one, how do you then save it to use your changes?
There is the export functionality.
Export.
So you click on an image or on multiple images. That is the one that you do on the library.
Okay, perfect.
So there, let's say you want to export these 2, there is an export.
Okay.
And yeah, you have presets. Wait, is it presets? Yeah, I can do this. And you can always create new ways to create a preset. So you can change the size, the quality, and things like that. When you export, it will basically create a JPEG file, for example, in this case. Now, there are lots of options here. We obviously can't go through all of them. But yeah, that's the point where actually, then you really have like an image.
Okay, perfect.
And that is going to stay as it is.
Okay. So whatever exported, the JPG file, again, can I bring it back and again it start doing the things, or do I need the original file to start?
So if you export JPEG, I mean, once it's JPEG, you don't want to use that JPEG for editing, because the JPEG usually already has a loss in data, and so there is no point. I mean, you're starting with the good files here. Just possibly keep a virtual copy rather than re-importing the JPEG file in there.
So if I want to do it again, so I have done some export and then I say,
oh, the file remains here.
Okay.
This is not lost. So if you close the program and come back in, these are not lost. Once you export, this remains here in this catalog. You can come back, you will find it here. So the export, so yeah, it's not lost.
Okay. You can make it better, and then the export is the final version of...
The export is like a print.
Print, okay.
So I like what I see, I'm going to print. Instead of printing, you export to a file, that's like a final version. There is no history on that file. And if you want to do more than that, you just keep working on this, or you make a virtual copy if you don't want to lose the changes that you've done here. So that's one way to look into this. So virtual copy is extremely powerful because it allows you to do either checkpoint or reinvent the whole thing from scratch without losing what you've already done, because yeah, there is no easy way to go back and say, oh, what was the history? At some point you lose the history. Okay?
So does that mean that it is always advisable to edit in Photoshop or Lightroom only when it is a raw file?
So in raw file, you must edit. There's no way around it. So when you have a raw file, you must edit somehow because the image is not in a format that you can actually use. If it's a JPEG, well, you can edit it. It's just that there is already some loss of information. So you can have a high quality JPEG like the ones we're going to use later on. But you cannot expect the same level of quality and control that you have with a raw file. One of the things, for example, in raw files is that you have so much more data that you can really increase or decrease the exposure. So even if you took an image that was under or overexposed, there's a good chance you might be able to actually pull it back if it's raw. If it's JPEG, you probably have much less chances because there's really much less data.
It has already removed it, right?
Yeah, it's already lost, so you might or might not be able. With the raw file, you have much higher chance to actually be able to salvage the image if you really have to. So, okay, sorry. A couple a little bit, I think I have one more. Oh no, that was, so digital evidence virtual call.
Can I ask one more question about Lightroom before you go into the Photoshop? So as far as collaboration goes, so we have a lot of our pictures on like OneDrive, and obviously I would just select OneDrive as the source of the files. If we have two different computers, how can we set it up so that I do some keyword and some adjusting here, but then she goes to her computer, opens it up. How can she see what I've done and what? Can you have two people on different computers access our libraries and collaborate and work on the same library?
So the key is the catalog. So when you open Lightroom, now when you can have multiple catalogs.
Okay.
So the important thing is that you share the same catalog. If you share the same catalog, then it's basically like one person using the same computer. I'm not sure they have functionality to actually, if you both open the catalog at the same time, I don't think that is something that they do.
Sure, but if we save the catalog in a space.
If you import the same catalog from two machines, it doesn't matter.
Time.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, I mean, you could export the whole catalog with images to another computer, and that will become basically as a live copy of what you have.
Okay.
The catalog is the key here, yeah, and the images, of course, but the catalog is the key.
Thank you.
Cooperation, I don't know. Really, I don't think it's designed. I don't do that, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't see a functionality that allows you user A and user B to do the same thing on the same catalog.
Yeah,
And
as
being
long as we
able to
open
tell
the same
the
catalog, I can see the image, I see the things that she's changed, then I can change some stuff, close it, she opens up the same catalog, and she can make changes.
She will. It's basically like switching seats at
Okay.
that point. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
If the file or the image is into the cloud, such as OneDrive, then they can share, right?
I suppose yes. I'm not sure how good Lightroom is with cloud catalog. If you have a catalog in the cloud.
The cloud is just, we both share the same.
Yeah, it should be, it should be.
It could be. It could be. Yeah.
That can be done if that's what you're trying to
Yeah.
do.
Thank you.
Good.
One question.
Sure.
Like, let's say like I take the photographs using my mobile, it says like 13 megapixel, I have JPG files. So will I have all the information like how we, when you make it dark, you can see the mountains here, which I don't see in the real file. So will I have that information when I use a picture from mobile? Do we have all the information when I start adjusting? Will I be able to see what I see through my eyes and then what is there in the picture? It's different.
I'm not getting the question. So when you
Yeah.
so you have the image, you took the picture with your phone,
Phone.
and then you import it into Lightroom.
Yeah, and then try to adjust.
You can adjust, yes.
Will I get the more information? Like, will that image has a lot of information?
If it's JPEG, not much, because JPEG is a format that actually throws away all the stuff.
Yeah, but how do I get that off from my phone? If I want to do something from the mobile?
Some applications allow you to export and RAW from mobile as well.
Yeah, that's what I want.
If you have that functionality in your phone, and probably the phone, and it's a combination of phone and application, and camera application on the phone. Some phones and some applications allow you to save as RAW file. It's probably PNG in the format that they use.
Okay.
then you'll be able to do that kind of
Otherwise, I might not have that information to tune up with the JPG.
We're talking about the extreme tune-ups.
Yeah,
I mean, a little adjustments you can do, because if I look at these images here, this is a JPEG file.
Okay.
You can still do a lot of stuff in the develop module. I think some stuff is reduced because
Okay.
it recognizes, but you can still do things. It's not like it doesn't allow you to do things. See? So this is,
So you see the clouds now.
yeah, you can see more of the clouds. I mean, the screen is also a little bit blown, but yeah, you can still do things here. It's not like you cannot. It's just that there are some levels of that you cannot reach with the JPEG file. No, but otherwise you can edit both, so that's not a problem. Yeah. Okay, let me reset that. Okay, next, Photoshop. Now for Photoshop, for Photoshop, one thing we're gonna talk about, and this is gonna be shorter for because I don't have a lot to say on Photoshop, also because we are getting there. So the class should stop at 4, so we'll try to be quick on this one, so that we can actually do the lab, which should be the fun part. At least I think should be the fun part. So open up your Photoshop, and the first thing we need to do is reset the photo workspace, because I went through some machines, and some machines don't have the right workspace on. So let me just quickly exit from here. So when you open Photoshop, and the first thing you want to do is go to Window, Workspace, and select Photography. Okay? So Window, Workspace, Photography. And once you've done that, go back again and go Window, Workspace, and it's acting up, the Reset Photography. What this does is basically resets the tools that you're going to be available to see, because as I said before, I mean, Photoshop does a lot of things, and it gives you here some predefined workspaces where you're going to basically bring up the tools that are going to be, in their opinion, useful for painting, for motion, for web, or things like that. So we're going to use the default photography workspace because it contains the tools that are most useful for photography. So I'm going to go through the tools just quickly for now, so we're going to use them later on. On the left side, you should be able to see a toolbar, and we're going to have like here lots of tools. So we have the Move tool, which is basically used to move objects around. Actually, let me do one thing just so that it makes a little bit more sense while you look at it. No, this one is not good. Let me do this with this one. So with the Move tool is used now with one single image, probably not very useful, but when you have multiple objects, it's useful for moving things around. Stop that. And you can basically move things around. We're going to use that later on in the tutorial. This is the Marquee tool, which is basically a tool that allows you to do selections. You can do square selections, you can do obviously rectangular selections, you can do elliptical selections. Many of these tools here, when you have a tool that drags, if you do a drag and drop, there are modifiers that you can use. For example, if you keep the shift key down, then you can, instead of being an ellipse, it becomes like a circle. And so now you have a way to draw an exact circle. And once you've done that, you can just move the circle around wherever you want. And you see those guidelines that are telling me that it's in the center of the picture itself, not on the center of the moon in my case. And when you just deselect, you can select somewhere else. For the square, it's the same thing. So if you don't press the shift key, it's going to be a rectangle. If you press the shift key, then you have a square, perfect square thing. You have other tools to create selections. You have a lasso tool, polygonal lasso, magnetic lasso. I can't go through all of them. Lots of tools for selections. Cropping and perspective corrections, color picker. This is similar to the ones that we use in Lightroom for fixing spots like that. You can see now we're going to make the moon not looking as the moon before. So this can use different type of algorithm to fix that. Let me undo all of those. And now here you have to be careful, because any change you do here, if you save, now they're going to be embedded in the file and you can't go back. So in Lightroom, things are preserved. But here, you really, if you work on a file and you save the file, then the file is done. We're going to look into what to do to avoid that one, or to be, at least being more conscious about. So lots of tools for fixing things around. This I don't remember what it is. So some of these you can. The brush tool is one of the probably very important tool because we're going to use it a lot. And the brushes have important properties up here that you're going to see. Now, one is the shape of the brush, which can be round, but you can also have different type of brushes. And those will be interesting, besides when you draw or outline stuff, where you probably want a square or round, you can also use brushes to actually create, for example, grass or hair, depending on the type of image you have, so things like that, okay? We're going to use those when you Photoshop things, where you're basically fixing a patch of grass, or if you do pet photography, you did a selection and you just need to adjust a little bit the outside, I mean, the fur of the pet, so you basically can adjust with these ones. Now, brushes have several, I mean, lots of options. They can be rotated, there can really a million of options there. But the most important things that I'm going to want to highlight here are the opacity and the flow. And to show what the opacity and flow mean, so opacity means basically when I press down the button, how deep the color goes in. Because if I reduce the opacity, for example, to, let's say, 25%, and I'm going to see that it's going to be much lighter, right? So I don't know if you can actually see that there, but if you just reduce the opacity, that's the amount of the ink that the tool is going to be put. Now, if you go again on the same spot, it's basically going to compound that. But in a single stroke, that's the amount you get, so 25% on. Now, the flow is another interesting functionality, because with the flow, what you control is the layering of the ink. So if you have 100%, it's like a marker. So it just puts everything out. You can't really go light with a marker, right? I mean, even if you go light, the marker is just going to bring down all the color. Now, if you decrease the flow, let's say to, depending on the application, let's say we put it at 15%. Now, depending on, it goes very, very, it is much lighter, and it can be compounded. Now you will say, what's the difference then between opacity and flow? The flow controls how much I put at every time, up to the maximum that is controlled by the opacity. So if I put an opacity of 50%, I can keep compounding here, but it's never going to exceed 50% of opacity. And so you basically can't overdo a certain level that you have in here. So we're going to use some of these. It basically allows you to create very soft selections or very soft borders or very light kind of bringing in the details in a very light way, so that you have more control when you do the.
So how do you get these? I mean,
so these you get when basically many of the tools that have like a brush functionality. So if you pick a brush or another like a column stamp tool, you should be able to see these dialogues up there. So we're going to keep
The menu options are different from what you're.
Oh, even when we reset, really? Well,
this is not working.
We see this one, so we don't see brush, but when you get this brush, somewhere here, so.
Oh, no, but you have opacity and things, right? This is done opacity. So some screens may be, yeah, those are the
But the brushes and the other stuff.
the brushes.
Yeah, but the.
Oh, yeah, unfortunately.
Okay, yeah, maybe it's the different version.
My guess, I was hoping to reset the thing and then it will just be all the same. Apparently, it doesn't help.
But how do you get to like this, like have a gray and another image, or?
Oh, I just created a new layer. We're going to talk about layers. It's just, I had an image open here, and then I just created a new layer on top.
Oh, no.
You can do a layer here. Oh, that's a group, sorry.
Will you go to layer?
We'll talk about layers in a minute. I was just trying to show you things. So if you have an image, you can play on the image. Just don't save them on the image. So I'm just trying to do it in a way that you could see. Oops.
So you're drawing a new.
Yeah, I have an image, or you can do new image. It's fine. If you really want to try, you can do new image and then just play on it. It's fine. So important piece for me here for the brushes is that you have an opacity, a flow, and then a size. And the size has two other options. It has hardness, which the hardness basically means how feathered it is. So if it's not feathered at all like this, it has a hardness of 100%. And that allows you to basically have very sharp edges, and then you can actually decrease the hardness there. Now, the control of the brush is, I think, up here. So if you're able to find that dot there, in some cases it's very small, you can decrease the size with this slider here, and then increase or decrease the hardness with this other slider here. The shortcut I use here on screen is keep the Alt key down, and then right-click. And then if you go right and left, it changes the size. So Alt, and then right-click with the button, and then you can go left and right and make it larger. And then while you still keep the right button, you can go up and down, and you change the hardness. So Alt key on, right-click with the button.
Out?
Alt.
Out key? What is out key?
Alt.
Okay.
And then right-click. If you drag right, the brush becomes larger. If you drag left, it becomes smaller. If you drag up, it becomes softer. If you drag down, it becomes harder.
So, okay, but once I take off the key, then it's going on. Okay.
Well, once you remove the key, then you have the brush of that size.
Ah,
So yeah, it's an interesting tool. And then we have the clone tool, the text tool, and a lot of other things. Now down here, you have the color. You can select the color that you want to use for your brush or for whatever tool you're going to use. Then when you click, you basically can select the colors. I have a very bad thing here right now.
So in Photoshop, we make changes on the layer.
On the Photoshop, we should make changes on the layers because, okay, we talked about the toolbar, the right panel. Oh, the right panel we haven't talked yet. The most important thing in Photoshop is the layers. Because when you work on layers, then you can basically preserve the original file. So a layer is basically just a piece of plastic on top of your image where you're actually going to do all your editing. And you can stack a lot of those. And so you can do little things incrementally on a different layer. And then you basically look from top down, and that's what you can do with that. So we'll talk about layers. Actually, now will be a good time to talk about layers. The tools, I think we walked through those. And, oh, this is, I didn't know. It's a touch screen. So we'll talk about layers now. So when you have an image, you basically now, for example, here I did the editing on top of the image, which is wrong. You should never do that. So let me just undo everything here. Don't save anything. At a certain point, there is no more saving, undo. So let's just not save that image. Let's just open this file again. Now, usually you want to add a layer, and then, for example, paint on this layer. Now, layers have interesting properties. One is the fact that you can hide and show them. Another property is that you can actually, obviously, stack them. So you can create a new layer, and now you do the pink one. And again, you can hide that, but you can also revert the order. So now the blue is on top of the pink. And you don't, obviously, you not only have layers where you can draw things, but you have layers where you can do adjustments. So if you go to the library here, you have all sorts of brightness, level, so you can actually make the image like, I mean, you can change the input-output things there. You can add, that's a new layer. You can add another layer for, let's see, for hue saturation. So now in this case, probably colorizing things, so making things look a certain color. And each layer has also, besides having the ability to hide and show, you also have the ability to mask things out. So you see that there are two components into a layer. So the one to the right is called a mask. Now a mask is basically,
So just basically, how do you create the layers?
oh, there's a button down here. If you can see, oh sorry, it's down at the bottom.
Or down?
Yeah. So there is here, you can open and create a new layer. Or if it's an adjustment layer, then you have these buttons here that will do the same. So a mask is a way to control where the effect is applied. So for example, and the effect is applied wherever the mask is white. So that controls the visibility of the effect. And so for example, in this case, this is what? This is the one that changes the color. This was a colorizing in orange. So basically colorizing the whole thing in orange. If I remove it, then that's gone. What if I only want to add it into a particular area? You can do things like make the mask black, so the effect is nowhere applied, because it's only visible where it's going to be white. We're going to take the brush, we're going to take a white color for our brush, and we can draw on the brush. Now, when you draw on the mask, when you draw on the mask, you're not going to see where you're going to go, but as you draw, you see that you're going to pick up now that effect there, and you're only going to see it where you're drawing on the mask. So remember, this is something that changes the color of the layer, and we are basically just only going to apply, I don't know, here inside this part of it. Of course, if I do it here, then this is going to be visible wherever. Wherever the mask is white, that's where you're going to see the effect. And this is where things start becoming interesting. Okay? So, good thing about layers, again, you can shift them around. No, I don't want to shift it, I want to move the whole layer. I want to bring this one up on top. So now if you bring a layer on top, this is a stack of cards that you're gonna look from top to bottom. So the first thing that my eyes are gonna encounter is the layer with the blue swirl. And in fact, we see the whole blue swirl. Then there is this layer which is empty. Then there is this layer that changes the curve, and it's going to apply to the whole image, but anything below it. So it's not going to touch my blue thing here. Then I have my colorizing tool, which is basically the one that is changing this orange color here. And then down there, under that is going to be my layer with the pink writing. And so basically things apply from top to bottom as you go. And then the background layer, which is basically what the original image is. So if you don't want to destroy an image, you can basically keep applying layers and then just save the file as it is. Now when you save a file as it is, save as Photoshop file. You can save it as either a Photoshop file or a TIFF. Just for not forgetting, just use a PSD file, and then a PSD file remembers all the layers that you have in there. And so that allows you to basically go back, modify the layer, delete, but that's going to be a copy. Every time you have a new file, it's a new file. So, and these files can become very big very quickly. So from a management point of view, Lightroom is more economical. And unless you really have to do very specific operations, Lightroom is a more efficient way to work. In Lightroom, you cannot draw things like that. You can't do these kind of things, like what we're doing like this. But if you need them, you find.
In Photoshop, we have several options that you can save as PPS, DPS,
It's a lot of formats. I mean, you can save it as a JPEG as well, but if you save it as a JPEG, then you lose all the layers. So that is, it depends. If you want to do that, that's fine, but just remember that the way to keep it safe is using the layers. Okay? Back to that, so layers, we talk about that. Oh, there is a blending mode. blending mode probably not going to be visible here. We'll talk about blending mode during the other the project. So I know it's going to be a lot. I know it was a lot because it's really compact and it's hard to say. But I hope that so far you got an idea of what workflow is, right? You start with the capture, you end up with the export, and you go in between the different steps. One is management of the assets, which is going to be useful for the future because then you're going to be able, it's useful today and in the future. Today because it allows you to efficiently go through your new pictures. You can easily tag them, easily select them, easily sort them, easily delete them. Deletion is an important step. So if your images, if the images that you don't want to keep, you have to be able to find them and delete them, either today or in a week. Maybe you select today 10 images that you don't like, and maybe you want to just have a pool of time before you actually delete them from the disk. At least you identify them, and then later on you can go back and then just delete them in 2 weeks or a month or 6 months. But it's work that you already have done. You don't have to go back there. And then, so editing, then the editing part, so you can select an image, edit it, possibly in a non-destructive way, so you just can always go back to the original, either with virtual copies or just with layering. And then in the end is the export where you can actually save the file, create that print file kind of a thing that is the final image that you're going to use either for your web page, for your whatever, for whatever you want to share it on your Facebook, anything. At that point, that's the final thing. So what we want to do now is apply a little bit of these, and I'm going to give you the steps as we go through so that it's easier for you to follow, but we're going to basically want to combine 3 different images. Now, you know that tomorrow, supposedly, we have a full moon eclipse, right? And you also know that tomorrow it's raining, we're not going to be able to go and see it, okay? So we're going to create it in-house, just so that you can go then and post it on Facebook and say, hey, yeah, I did this. So we're going to use those 3 images, 3 of those 6 images that you've seen, the full moon, the castle, and the Milky Way, and we're going to composite them so that we actually fake a full moon, a moon eclipse, a lunar eclipse. So the idea is to create something like this. It's cheesy. You may not agree with it, but just follow so that we do the exercise. It's not for the beauty of it. But it will give you the idea of how we actually combine these things together and what we can do with a digital workflow. So some stuff can be done better, I agree, but just follow just for the exercise. And then I'm going to, no, I'm not going to create you, just kidding. Okay, so let's work on this. Now we're going to be basically following through with the exercise. So go on your Photoshop. If you have anything open, close everything you have in there. We're not going to use Lightroom anymore. And basically bring up the folder, the raw files that you have, and select the 3 images that don't have a DSC name, basically the architecture, the astronomy, and the other astronomy file. Okay, drag them in, and so we basically bring them in. Okay?
So which ones? Architecture?
Yeah, the first 3, I think, just not the DSC files. Let's pick the good images.
So we are just opening, right? We are not exporting.
No. Bring them into Photoshop. Yeah.
Open.
So 3 images here. So if I look at the first, this is the Milky Way, this is the castle, and this is the background here, okay? So let's start, let's see what the steps were. Okay, let's bring them into a stack. So what we want to do now, these are 3 images in 3 different windows here. We want to combine them into one single file, into one single image, but we're going to put them in layers. So in order to do that, in order to do that, let's select the move tool here, so the cross up here, and then let's, it doesn't matter which image you have on your first, so go to the second one, and then click and drag the image, even if it doesn't move, just drag it onto this other step, and then go into the middle and release it. If you're there, then just click outside and let it be, that's fine. Pick the middle image and then drag it onto, so click and drag it onto the tab of the first image, whichever you have, it doesn't matter. And then it should shift and then you just let it go inside.
It did come.
Okay. Bring it here and then let it go in here.
Oh,
Let it go only when the other image pops up. Yeah. Yeah.
Then go.
Yes, so you should have now to your right two layers. One is the background and one is layer one. With the two images you should have.
Where is then go?
No, just so when you drag it, keep the button keep the button down, then just let it go when you are on top of the image.
Oh, that comes with the 3 layers.
Yes. So then we do the same with the last image, and then we bring it again on the first. So this is how it works. So click on the third image, use the move tool, click and keep the button clicked, the left button of the mouse clicked, drag onto that, still keep it clicked, go onto top of the image. Once you are on top of the image, then let go. Then release the button. So you should have the 3 layers here. Okay, fantastic. We can close the other ones and just keep this one in here. Now what we want to do is let's start working on the castle. So to work on the castle, what we can do is let's hide everything. So just basically click on the eye here, and then click on the eye of the background. I mean, just basically click on the eye of anything that is not your castle, okay? Now, if the castle is too big, like that, so where's the castle? Actually, you know what? Let me do one thing. Let's redo this 1 second. Sorry, follow me. My mistake, because yeah, I've done it in a certain order, but let's do it again, and then yeah, because I didn't realize that there was this big a difference. So let's start by using the castle as the bottom one, and then drag everything onto the castle, wherever you are. That's probably the easiest.
So would the sequence matter, because we could actually change the layers anyhow?
Yes, but I don't remember now exactly what is the best way to enlarge everything, because then I have to use another tool. So instead, let's just do it simply like that. It is correct. What you're saying is right. So we could enlarge the whole image, but then I have to explain them. Okay, so
The way you just did the 3 layers and then bring it back now.
because I picked the first image, I picked it as the size of the document. That's the only reason. If you remember, before I had a very narrow document, because I think the first one I used was this one. These images have all different sizes. And so it's just a matter of picking one that is the wider right now. But I mean, if you want to follow the thing, we can do this quickly. The other way is you could have enlarged the image like that.
But the image where you have dropped, that should be bigger. So you need to select that one. So that's why you want to.
So it's easier to just.
Okay.
Yeah, now you are in the correct order. So just move the layer up. Center on to top.
And now you understand where the move tool can do things, because now it can actually move things around.
Right side. The layer. Yeah. So the layers, yeah, this one go back. Now we will have on top.
Now let's hide those 2 layers, and let's keep just the castle up.
How do you hide?
So to hide, there is this eye on the left side. On each layer, you will see that there is this eye, kind of an icon.
I see.
You can just click on that, and then the layer becomes invisible.
I see.
Now, make sure that you click also on the layer name, or on the image, so that we are actually selecting that layer. One of the mistakes that happen often is that another layer is selected, and you work on something else, and you don't see the results. Okay, now let's do this. Let's create a curves layer. So let's click on the curves adjustment layer, which is this S kind of a curve diagram.
Sorry?
This one here. It's on the top to the right. Just click once, it will create a new layer.
For the adjustment?
It's, oh, sorry, if your libraries, it's adjustments here.
Yeah.
Adjustments, and then click on this once, and you should have 1 layer added here.
What is the
So
name?
I have 2 layers added.
It's called curves.
Creating new curves adjustment.
Yes, correct. The third one, the middle one, or the top one. Okay? Okay, now I think you should have this dialog here. If you don't, double click on this icon, and you have this screen here.
Yeah.
Now let's take the line here, and then just bring it up until the sky becomes white. Don't go too much. We just want the sky to be white. Okay?
I didn't get that.
Hmm?
I didn't get that line. How do you get that line?
So if you don't see this,
Uh-huh.
then double click here,
Yeah.
and then you have this line, and then you can just basically click here and then just drag this thing up a little bit.
Mine is
This is more like control the light from where?
Yes, but we're going to use it for a different reason, and I'm going to explain it in a minute.
So when I do the curves, it came up with a pencil icon, not a,
And then select this, so you need to select the tool. Yeah, unfortunately, apparently even if we reset, it doesn't really reset.
That line
So this thing here, you have to be able to move.
oh, got it, okay. That one right there. Ah, got it, okay. There we go.
Okay? So make sure that you see it white enough, just not too much, so that you don't have anything blue on the sky anymore. So just be very gentle when you go out. Just remove the blues. What we want is we want to keep this outline here. Because the next step, we're going to use the, what is it? The magic wand. And so for finding the magic wand, you want to go into the left toolbar. And then there should be the fourth tool from the top. And then if you don't see it, you right click and select magic wand. So if you don't see that, right click magic wand.
I didn't want
Okay, and then now click in the white area.
Just like W.
Oh, then you selected
Okay.
that.
Select the outline.
And now we have selected the outline. By all means, this is not the ideal way to do this. So, but to get a decent result, we can cheat the system a little bit.
So what does magic wand do? It selects.
It will select an area. You see that these marching ants thing, this border that is moving? Now that area is selected.
How does it select? Because that is the image location.
It selects based on color.
Based on.
Based on color. So now it, whenever you click the magic wand, it looks at the color that is in that spot. And then it selects all the adjacent area that are on that color. So we made this whole white, so now it's going to select basically the whole sky. That was the reason why we did this. What we want to do next is we're going to click on the background. We're going to do a duplicate layer. So right click on the background and do duplicate layer.
Okay.
And then just accept. So we have a copy.
So we have a layer over layer.
Layer over layer of the same image. And now while we are clicked here, click on this button down there which says add the layer mask. Okay?
One more time, what is it?
So
Add layer mask.
Oh, we got-
click down here, so select that image, click down there, and then there is this button here, it's the third from the left, which says add vector, no, not vector,
Layer.
well now vector mask, but it was add layer mask.
Yeah.
And so you should see now this is the outline. Mhm. Now we don't need this layer anymore. So we can take this layer and we can delete it. And we can delete it in many ways. You can, I think, delete after you select it, and we'll be fine.
The curves layer we're deleting?
The curves layer, yeah. So we use that one only so that we could do an easy selection of the sky. Have faith.
Okay.
Okay? Now hide the bottom one, the bottommost layer. We're not going to need that one anymore.
I'm just selected.
So just leave this one on. So now we have only the sky selected, but that's not what we wanted, right? So click on the mask.
So how do you delete the castle? Sorry.
Oh no, it's because we're hiding with the mask. So, oh sorry, there was, I hid the background down here.
Okay.
So now you see this. As I said before, a layer mask hides everything on the black side and leaves visible things on the white side. It's like a cutout.
Okay.
Now this is not the right cutout, right? So we want the opposite of it. So click on the mask. So make sure you click on the mask and then Control I. invert.
Sorry?
So
Control,
click on the mask and then press Control and I.
Click on what, sir?
On the mask, so when you are on the layer, you can click either on the image, which is here, or on the mask on the right. So click on the mask,
Got it.
and then Control I.
Invert.
Hmm?
Basically inverting.
It inverts, exactly. It inverts the mask. So what is white becomes black, what is black becomes white. And now we have a perfect selection. It's not a perfect selection, but I think it's good enough for the exercise.
Close enough. All right.
Okay? We there? Good. Next, let's go to the next layer, the sky. Let's pick the sky. Now the sky is obviously in the wrong place, right? So, but before we move the sky, let's make the sky a little bit bigger. To make it bigger, I think we can do it with the Move tool. So select the Move tool. So after you select the sky layer, so on the image, use the Move tool, and let's resize this. And you can resize it however you prefer. If you don't see the bottom because it's too big, you can zoom out in a few ways. Let me see if you have. Let me know if you have troubles there.
How do you select to zoom?
To zoom, you do Alt, and then wheel in and wheel out. The mouse wheel in.
So I need to select that particular layer, right?
You need to select that particular layer and then use the Move tool for that. And then if you click a couple times, at a certain point it says whether to apply or not. Yes? Now obviously this is in the wrong place, but remember layers are layers, so you can move them. So you can drag this layer behind the castle. So all you do is select the layer and then you move it under the castle. Now we have the sky behind the castle.
How do you move? Sorry, one more time.
You just click and then drag it. On the right, where you see all the layers, you can just click on one layer and then move it down or up, and then you basically can change the position. You click here and then move it.
And
If you probably have to move it a little bit further. You see that?
You can hold and then move.
Oh yeah, click and move.
Click and hold.
Click and hold and then drag it down.
I know.
Select your this layer.
Click on the layer.
You might have some.
So what I'm gonna do is darken this way. Well, that's the So see, like, okay, so we're kind of on this area, right? No, we don't. Because this whole thing should be, this is a subtle
so that
effect.
we
This whole
make
thing
the
is
castle
darker than it currently
show
looks.
up, right?
So it's gonna play
Yeah.
with
Yeah,
the
the mask, I'm not quite sure how it works, right? Not how the mask works. It's either,
So mask is actually taking the contrast of white versus the
No,
color.
on the,
Cut the boundaries
yeah.
of colors.
You notice
And just
it
cover
actually
everything.
automatically created a
well, there's
mask.
other masks create
When I
like,
started playing with them.
yes, I want the white one, so.
You will have to.
Yeah, but can you move this layer?
Yes.
It's nighttime. Under starry sky.
Yeah, no, by the way, it's the same. It was because you have to apply first.
Oh, yeah, right.
Oh. Like that?
Then you can move the layer. Yeah, I forgot that. Because it's basically still trying to do, you asked me to resize. Can you resize and you apply?
How do you apply?
On top there is a button that will say apply. On the top side, if it's still there, if there is an apply button, you have to click there. It's going to be somewhere in here. Let's see if I do. See, let's say I resize, it should be either a check or an apply button here. So we are really taking
The castle is
Okay. Now we still have the moon, which hasn't been fixed. So the moon is going to be also an interesting thing. So let's hide everything for now, and let's work just on the moon, okay? So for the moon, click on the layer where the moon is.
Hide everything but the moon, okay?
Hide everything but the moon. It's just for convenience. And now let's use the elliptical marquee tool. So on the left, second from the top, right click and pick the elliptical. And now go more or less towards the center of the moon, towards one angle of the moon, so the top left corner. Press the shift button, because the moon is more or less round. And then let's drag and create a selection, which doesn't have to be exactly the size of the moon, but just approximately. And don't worry if it's not centered, just by eye make sure that it's more or less there. Then let go, and then you can adjust the position of this selection, okay? So for this, you just need to just click and drag it a little bit. So when you like what it is, don't click anywhere else. Just go down and then apply. Where's it not allowing? So do that. Move it a little bit, and then I should be able to. Oh yeah, you have to click on the layer and then just apply the mask. Now we have it.
So sorry, what did you do?
So let me just redo that. Okay, oops.
Yeah, I can
Okay, so we are on the layer. We pick the marquee tool, shift, so we have a round selection, make it a good size, drag it towards, the center, and then if this is disabled, if this is not enabled, make sure you click here again, and then you can click on the apply mask, add a layer mask, sorry, add layer. Now you have a moon. Now, in my case, it's a little bit off. I'm going to adjust a little bit, but besides that. Okay. So now we have the same problem. Now the moon is in the wrong place. The moon we wanted behind the castle, but in front of the sky. So you just drag it down in between the sky and the castle, and you can just slide it right behind it. If it's too big for your taste, you can always make it smaller. And then apply the resize. I like it a little bit bigger.
No, not on this. Select the layer of this also. Yeah, now it's no select, yes.
Let me quickly check my notes. It comes up. Use separation, please. Okay, now we could actually rename these.